What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and I was talking with a buddy yesterday. We were watching the Monday night game, and he showed me his 1-3 fantasy team. And he was pretty much picking my brain of if you're 1-3 or you're 0-4 and you're down bad, does it make sense to just hold on to everything, just sort of hunker down, hold on for dear life, and just say the first 4 weeks, we got the bad side of variance. Let's just sort of keep everything together. Or should I start to scramble to make trades right now? And after going back and forth, I think the move is to probably not scrap your team, not start selling people low, but I think you should be leaning into trade offers. You should be trying to get trades to work, trades together, and invite that variance onto your team where even if you're losing in a deal, like slightly losing or it's a coin flip, you want to just keep, sort of getting that ticket in there of flipping that coin to sort of invite more variance because you kind of need a spark. And at that point, you have nothing to lose. An example of this would be you make a trade where, let's say you gave away Javonte Williams for Clyde Edwards-Helaire a week ago. Everyone would have laughed at you. Everyone would have said you're an idiot. Twitter, YouTube live streams, whatever. Week later, Javonte gets hurt. It's unfortunate, and it's not even a good way to win that trade, but that's how the NFL works. Injuries happen all the time. Players just sort of come out of nowhere. So I think sort of the moral of the story is that you should be trading. You should be inviting those kinds of outcomes onto your team if you are struggling. So we're going to talk about today my 5 must buy and sell trade targets. We're going to talk about some trade targets for people who are 3-1, 4-0, some that are for players that are 1-3, 0-4, all of that good stuff. So let's not waste any more time. Make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like if you enjoy. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty babe.
Our first trade target for today is going to be a trade target for any team out there. If you're winning, if you're losing, I think Breece Hall is somebody that you should be buying. Now, he's not quite a traditional buy low, but he's been just quiet enough that his price shouldn't be outrageous. He only just put up 15 PPR points. He's the RB17 on the season. I don't think his price is going to be crazy. Now, RB17, I think he has upside for a lot more than that because the usage recently has been really encouraging. Where we thought going into the year, Breece Hall would be the between the tackles guy and Michael Carter would be squeezing him for pass catching work. The crazy part is that through 4 weeks and through 2 weeks of out-snapping and out-touching Michael Carter, he is almost beating out Michael Carter for the pass-catching role. He had 7 of 15 2-minute drill snaps. He had 8 of 12 third down snaps. And it's really crazy, but Breece Hall's usage on paper looks exactly like Austin Ekeler's, where they both have 16.2 expected points per game, which is 6th in the NFL. By the way, expected points is just based on your carries, your touches, your targets, your red zone touches, all the volume that you get on every Sunday, how many points should you be delivering? They're both at 16.2, and Breece Hall leads all running backs in expected points per game from the receiving game with 10.7 points per game of those 16.2 coming from the receiving game and only 5.5 expected points per game from the rushing game. So this is just dividing expected points per game into targets, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and rushes, rush attempts, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns. So Breece Hall being at 10.7 in the receiving game, first in the NFL, second among all running backs and targets behind only Ekeler right now, and then being 38th in rushing expected points per game at 5.5 is crazy. That's actually less expected points on the ground than what Ekeler has right now. The good news is that going into the NFL, Breece Hall's biggest hurdle was the passing down role. He has already gotten a bunch of targets, a bunch of the passing down role. The rushing role is the easy one for him to get. The difference between him and an Ekeler, right, where he has the same usage as Ekeler right now, Ekeler's a 5'9", 199-pound receiving back. Breece Hall is a 5'11", 215-pound bell cow that ran over 1,400 rushing yards 2 times in his career at Iowa State. The rushes are on the way. I think that his expected points per game will probably still hover around, instead of 16 right now, it'll probably be in like the 17-ish area, but I think it's going to even out a little bit where we're going to see his rushing EP go from like 5 expected points to 7, 8, 9, and then his receiving 10.7 is pretty high. It'll probably come down to like 7.5, 8.5, but he's going to have a spot here where as he gains more of the rushing role, and if like 80% of that receiving role stays, you're looking at a guy that has a potential for 20 points per game in a season where no running back wants to step up at all. And you add all that together with his playoff schedule down the stretch, where he's going to be playing against the Detroit Lions, who are allowing the second most fantasy points to running backs, the Jaguars, who are allowing the seventh most points to running backs, and the Seahawks, who are allowing the fourth most points to running backs. He is going to be potentially one of those guys in the fantasy playoffs from weeks 10 on that you needed to have to win your leagues. I would go out there, and if I could flip any of like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Devin Singletary in a small piece, Miles Sanders, Rashad Penny in a small piece to get to Breece Hall, I would be doing that all day long. Our next buy candidate here is Jaylen Waddle, and I think there's a lot of negative energy around the Dolphins right now, where they came out super hot. They beat the Ravens in a crazy game. They beat the Bills in a crazy game. And then Thursday happens. Tua has a horrific injury. They lose on a primetime game. Teddy Bridgewater doesn't look good. This feels like the lowest the public has been on this passing offense since the season started. Jaylen Waddle only had 5.9 points. So I think this is where you would pounce. Now, I have Waddle everywhere. I can't take on any more Waddle because I have him everywhere. But if you can get your hands on some more Waddle, he is a great buy here. Everyone's going to think that this Dolphins offense is going to be terrible with Teddy Bridgewater. They think that Tua is like essentially never going to play football again. Like that was the concern coming out here. It seems like it's less serious than that at this point. And just to talk about what he's going to do while Tua is gone, Teddy Bridgewater isn't a bum. And we know that Mike McDaniel is a pretty good coach to this point. I think I'm being very conservative there. He looks like the real deal. Teddy Bridgewater supported wide receiver 19, wide receiver 24, wide receiver 25, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, all in the same season in Carolina. Now, you give him Mike McDaniel, and then you give him Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, two wide receivers who make their bread after the catch on crazy efficiency, two guys that can take slants 60 yards to the house. You just need Teddy Bridgewater to give them the ball before the first down marker. He'll do that. Will the deep shots, like 60-yard bombs not be there as much? Probably not, but I will say he did connect with Tyreek Hill on like a 60-yard launch on Thursday. I still think that this offense isn't going to be that bad. And then also, I think the Tua injury, it was awful. Concussion protocol sucks, all of that. His timetable doesn't seem that over the top. 4 for 4 is Adam Hutchinson. He's their doctor over there. Has him projected to only miss 2 weeks. He would be back by week 7. It seems like the public thinks that the Tua injury is a lot more horrific than that. And it definitely wasn't a great look, but it seems like he's going to be back playing by week 7. So what, you get 2 weeks of Teddy Bridgewater, and then you get Jaylen Waddle back in the offense that he was. I think he's a very easy buy across the board. He's the wide receiver 5 in fantasy right now, and he's likely a top 10 wide receiver rest of season. And this feels like the cheapest you'll be able to buy him. Now, if you're 1-3 and you're 0-4, I actually take that back, that this would be a buy for everybody. If you're 1-3 and you're 0-4, you probably don't want to take on Jaylen Waddle with the Teddy Bridgewater weeks, just because you could probably use that elsewhere for somebody that maybe could give you more points immediately. But if you're 3-1 and you're 4-0, and you can kind of take on a Waddle and deal with the Teddy Bridgewater games, which again, I don't think will be even that bad, I think that's a great way to just kind of compound your lead in the league. Now, I'm hitting you guys with a little switch up. We're going to do 2 buys and 3 sells in this video, but I'll give you guys some honorable mentions that were on my list to be bought, but I didn't actually put in this video, or I didn't write anything for them. I have A.J. Brown, who, like the Eagles, were a little bit quiet. A.J. Brown hasn't had like a crazy game since week 1. If you can buy him, I like that. Kamara, who we mentioned in last week's video, that wouldn't be for somebody who's down bad right now. That's if you're 3-1, 4-0. I do think that Kamara will be back, and he'll be probably fine by like week 8, 9, whatever. I like Darren Waller as well. I like Gabe Davis as well, where he hasn't looked great recently. Maybe you can buy him for the cheap. And that's one, if you're 1-3 or 0-4 and you're down bad, I do think that Gabe Davis is a great like lean into variance type of trade target, where you get Gabe Davis and you kind of live and die by Gabe Davis. But the Bills offense has put up like 20 points in each of the last 2 games. This is an offense that should be in like the 30+ range a lot of the times. And he's been fighting that ankle injury. And it was raining on Sunday. I do think that Gabe Davis has big games ahead. Now, when we talk about our sell candidates here, we have Mike Evans at the top. And Mike Evans gave you his annual 30+ point game. He had 1 in 2021. He had 1 in 2020. He now has 1 in 2022. You probably won your week because of it. And I don't think there's any shame after probably winning your week last week because of Mike Evans, moving on and selling him high after that. We're in week 5. The people are going to be panicking. And Mike Evans is a known commodity who's coming off a huge week. He has a big name. I don't think it's going to be that hard to sell him for wide receivers who have underperformed recently, like a Jamar Chase, an A.J. Brown, an Amon-Ra St. Brown. I even like the idea of selling him for a piece plus CeeDee Lamb, Waddle, Deebo Samuel, T. Higgins, Chris Godwin. All wide receivers I think are probably very similar to Mike Evans, but as of right now, Mike Evans is sort of viewed by the market really highly right now, where I want to say in this trade target tool, he's like the wide receiver 7 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, he's the wide receiver 7, sandwiched between Jamar Chase and A.J. Brown. If you can move off of Mike Evans for Jamar Chase or A.J. Brown, I think you've done your team a solid. Now, you guys are probably saying, why are you selling Mike Evans? And it's not even so much that Mike Evans is bad or anything. Of course he's good. He's going to get you your 1,000, 10 touchdown season, and he's not going to fall off a cliff, but it just feels like his value is a little bit inflated for what he is. He has 3 touchdowns in only 2 games at this point. It's a little bit unsustainable. He only had a 19.2% target share in his game back with Chris Godwin in the lineup. His volume is going to be a little bit lower than it was in week 1. With Godwin back in the lineup, he should still see spike weeks. He's going to be fine, but like top 7 wide receiver in that same tier as like Chase, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown. To me, he's the tier behind that, and I'll probably have him right in there with like T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, for me personally. Now, to be clear, I am not saying go run him and sell him as quick as you possibly can for whatever offer hits your inbox. He's an absolutely fine hold. He's a fringe wide receiver 1. And my teams, I like having wide receivers that are very good on my team all the way through the flex, dominating my opponents in those spots. You guys know that from this offseason. But if he's going to be trading at like wide receiver 7-ish, and you can get Mike Evans to turn into a Jamar Chase or an A.J. Brown or an Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think that you have to do that deal. If that's not even remotely on the table, then you hold on to Mike Evans, you bank his spike weeks, and you live to see another day. Our next sell candidate is Miles Sanders, who's coming off a massive day. He had 27 carries, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns, all on the ground for 29.6 PPR points. He sits at the RB9 on the year at 16.3 points per game. And of course, he had a big day, but he kind of had a perfect storm here where it was a rainy game. There was no Boston Scott. The passing game wasn't really working because of the rain game. And then they got up big on the Jaguars and they ran the ball a ton. 27 carries for Miles Sanders is a lot. 20 plus carries for Miles Sanders is a lot. This is a guy who, I looked back, 27 carries is tied for his most carries in a single game dating back to college when he had 27 carries versus Rutgers in 2018. And if we look at his NFL games, this was only his 4th game over 20 carries in 44 career NFL games. Now, that's completely fine, right? I love Alvin Kamara. I love DeAndre Swift. I love Aaron Jones. These are all guys, Eckler. These are all guys who aren't 20 carry per game guys. They make up for it in the passing game. And this is the issue for Miles Sanders. 20 plus carries per game is not on the table for him, especially with Jalen Hurts in that backfield. Boston Scott will come back. Miles Sanders is never a guy that's going to take on a 20 carry per game type workload. He's not Nick Chubb. And the issue is that his passing game role, usage, whatever, with Dallas Goedert there, with A.J. Brown, with Devonta Smith, it's not going to be very big. He had 3 targets, 2 catches, 22 yards on Sunday. He now has 8 catches for 35 yards on the entire season. That is nowhere near enough. So you're pretty much just banking on him between the tackles. And I think he's going to be just what he was before this week, right? He'll be like a fringe RB2, like kind of hang around that RB24 to RB30 range. And that'll be fine. He'll give you his sort of like 14 to 15 points per game. And that's all good and well. And if you drafted him in like the 9th round or 8th round on a hero RB team and he's your RB2 and he's doing great for you, you can hold. But if you somehow have 2 stud running backs in this economy and Sanders just kind of a flex play for you and you have like wide receivers that you're picking between and Miles Sanders, go out there, ship him off. So you can get like a DK Metcalf, a Hollywood Brown, a Chris Godwin. If you want to swap him out for another running back, you can do like Breece Hall or J.K. Dobbins. 2 guys I think have much more upside than Miles Sanders. But again, if he's giving you points and he's in your lineup, feel free to ride it out. Now, our last sell here feels super cliche, but if I could shop around TJ Hockenson, I would. And I know you guys are going to say like TJ Hawkinson's like the most obvious sell high candidate in the entire world. He had 12 targets, 8 catches, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns for 39.9 points at the tight end position. He went from 8.1 points per game through 3 weeks. So tight end 12 stuff there. Someone that you were almost debating dropping. And then he comes out here, puts up 39.9 points. And now when you go to the standings, right, in terms of PPR points per game, he's tight end 3, 16 points per game. He looks like a set and forget it tight end now. And that's when I think you could hop in here, make some swaps. I do think that this usage won't stick at all. Swift wasn't there. St. Brown wasn't there. I think he'll sort of have a little bit of a backseat when those guys do come back. And I would love the idea of using Hockenson at tight end to then upgrade to Kelsey or Andrews, or upgrade to like Kyle Pitts, Darren Waller, whatever you can get into in that like top 5 elite tight end tier. And I know some people out there are going to say there's no one out there who's going to do that. No one's going to give you Darren Waller for TJ Hockenson. So I ran a poll on Twitter. I just wanted to see kind of where the market was at. And I asked them Hawk versus Pitts, Hawk versus Waller, Hawk versus Kittle. And it's pretty much a coin flip across the board. You have Hockenson losing the Pitts by 47% to 52%. It's really close there. Hockenson versus Waller is like 56% to 44%. And then Hockenson versus Kittle is 59% to like 40%. So Pitts and Kittle can be done pretty easily. Waller, maybe you put a small piece in there. But I think it makes sense to sell high on Hockenson and get yourself into one of those top 5 tight ends. You'll probably have to give up a stud to get to Kelsey or Andrews. But if you could do like Hockenson with like Amari Cooper or a Terry McLaurin or a Chris Olave, DeAndre Hopkins, a Miles Sanders, a Rashad Penny, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if any of those guys plus Hockenson can get you into Andrews or get you into Kelsey, I would be doing that all day long. Now that's going to do it for us today. As always, if you want to know where I'm at rest of season wise, I have my rest of season rankings that come out every Wednesday night. I have my top 50 running backs, top 50 wide receivers, top 25 quarterbacks, top 25 tight ends. So when you're out there making trades, you can see who I prefer versus who, what tier I have them in, just so you can go out there, dominate your trades, make sure you're not sort of selling low or buying too high on certain players. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena for misdemeanors. Dreamer, held back asses, Loki still a zen. And I still